should we be worried about Dune Awakening? Now, as I've posted a handful of videos about Dune and all the information that we have coming up, I've gotten an almost equal amount of comments of people who are exceedingly wary of the game, specifically of its developer in Funcom. While I do think it's warranted to be cautious, I'm going to explain to you why I think Dune Awakening is going to be so much better than we are expecting. So first, let's go ahead and talk about the game publisher, which is Funcom. Funcom is most notably known for Conan Exiles. Now, personally, I have no experience with Conan Exiles. I won't sit here and pander to you and say that I have. However, I have perused some of the comments, and especially the ones that have popped up on my Dune Awakening, which it seems that it's kind of essentially bleeding over. From what I can gather, they seem to have a handful of development issues, either with their game, certain bugs, and essentially just an overall bad experience, which I have heard that their initial launch wasn't all that great. And while yes, an initial launch can really completely torpedo in any type of game, it seems like over the years they have gotten significantly better. Mostly positive is the current rated review for their game on Steam. Now, I don't know necessarily if that's going to be a fair apples to apples comparison. I don't know if that's enough to judge what one game is going to be compared to another. However, we can see that when they initially launched and in their first couple of years, they had a lot of hiccups, as what you would expect with most games coming out nowadays, is that, yes, there's going to be a little bit of ups and downs. Some games will completely nail it right out the gate. I'm talking about like Helldivers 2. And while it's good that they have done a lot better, I think it's more important that they had this journey going from where they were to where they are now, and why leading into a new game is going to be possibly the best thing for this new game, is because now we have a track record of progress, we have a track record of it getting better, and things that they have learned along the way. Now, I've kind of put it to myself that I'll try Conan Exiles as a new player experience leading up to, before I should say, Dune Awakening comes out. And this is something that I've kept in the back of my mind, is I feel like that's going to be the fairest comparison between one game to the next. You can imagine that there's going to be certain similarities from what we would see in Conan to Dune Awakening, so I think that is a fair comparison, at least in that regard. But from what I can tell, Funcom has been doing a pretty good job, I should say, as far as what Dune Awakening has been shown. They've kept their game, which is currently in closed beta and under an NDA, very well hidden. There hasn't been too many leaks. I have a couple of screenshots, but they all kind of look like AI developed. And even furthering why I think that we are a little bit too harsh on Funcom is that based off of their experience and what they have been able to produce with Conan, plus having the backing of Legendary Pictures. Mind you, Legendary Pictures is also the one that's worked with the Frank Herbert estate, who wrote Dune, to develop the Dune movies, which have been huge successes. I mean, all the way up until they just announced that they're going to do a third Dune, Dune Messiah, which this is all good signs. And especially with Funcom reaching out and working with not only the Frank Herbert estate, but Legendary Pictures, this is essentially building up to what we can expect as far as the story and the lore is concerned. Let me put it this way, that it's going to be as accurate and up to date as possible. Now, as far as gameplay, we're really just banking on what Funcom has learned over their years. Now, Funcom actually reached out to me a number of years ago for this channel to write a review for Dune Spice Wars. And at the time, it was my side channel, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it. I played Dune Spice Wars. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It really is. It's a little bit slower. It's more like a 4X Civilization type game, I would say. But overall, it was a good experience. Like, I had a lot of fun. I remember talking to the people at Funcom, and they were very nice and friendly. There really wasn't too many bugs that were a part of it. Now, to be fair, Funcom also was just the publisher. The developer of the game was Shiro Games, which Shiro Games, of course, is most notably known for their Northgard RTS. Now, I will say, based off of that experience, what I saw with that game, as well as what Conan Exiles could potentially be, and this is, again, something I'm going to have to dive into. Now, the only real major point of contention that I have right now is looking at the monetization of Conan Exiles. Now, it seems like it's a buy once, play forever kind of deal, so of course, you know, with most games, game developers are out to make money, so I can understand that. And it does seem like there's lots of, we'll say, extra pieces of content that you can download, and most of them are about like $7 to $10. There's one for 20. And again, with a game that's been out for 6 years now, there's of course going to be some type of DLC, because if they're working on it, they want to get paid for it. I can understand that, but it seems like that's also a big point of contention for the community, is that they don't like how it's monetized. And rightfully so. I mean, I look at the most recent game that I played that's like this, which is Enshrouded, which came out at a price point, I think, somewhere in the $30 neighborhood. And it offered a lot of good fun for me. I actually have kind of been addicted to just building bases. But the point of it being is that many players actually don't like that overly priced, that overly monetized view. And another side of that is that longtime players who, in looking at some of the reviews that are here over on Steam, they don't necessarily like what Funcom has done with the game, the direction that Funcom has taken. Now, necessarily, I can't speak on it because I have, as mentioned, haven't put any hours into it, but it does seem like there's a consensus of they have focused and pushed heavily onto a battle pass and almost like fear of missing out type of monetization, which again is something that personally I dislike, I disdain. I don't know necessarily enough to speak onto it, and if you know more than me, please, I ask you to comment down below. As eventually I'm going to get into Conan Exiles and try it out before Dune Awakening to see a little bit more of a comparison. But I can understand why some of the people in the community are upset. Unsure of how the monetization will be for Dune Awakening, however, I do want to remain, we'll say that, optimistic that it isn't going to be heavily pushed DLC and all these extra little packs and nickel and dime us down the road. Again, hopeful, but cautious. And the last major point of contention that I've seen that a lot of people, either in comments or I've read on threads, of why people are concerned about Dune Awakening is that there really hasn't been too much gameplay footage, right? We haven't seen much of anything outside of a handful of screenshots, and that was about it. And I've covered them here. We have a couple of pictures of the UI, maybe a picture of the map. You know, there really hasn't been too much information given to us to understand what kind of game this is. I think this is twofold a good thing, honestly. Let me put it this way. It's a twofold good thing. One, they have stressed, Joel Bailos has stressed from like day one that the game is going to take as long as the game takes, which is honestly, I would rather them take an extra year to develop this game and make sure it lands on its feet properly and takes off, rather than them rush it out because they need to make X amount of money. Having said that, I will say that they are taking as long as they are going to take to create the game the way that they need to, which means that they're probably not up to their standards or their par as far as the fluid combat and everything that they want it to be, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with them taking their time on that. And then second, I think that they haven't really shown any of the gameplay footage, not because there isn't anything to show, but more so that they're trying to make it almost like an exclusive behind-the-scenes type thing. Again, they're in a closed beta. There's a lot of things that they haven't shared with us, and there's probably a lot of things that they won't share with us. So us waiting and having to hold out for this gameplay footage, I think is going to be used almost as a marketing ploy, really, which, again, you got to market the game, and I can't blame them there. I mean, I don't think it would kill them if they just showed me like how the Swordmaster would play, like how does a melee combatant play. But I digress. Now, one thing that has me cautiously optimistic about the game is that they have been as transparent as they need to be regarding the systems and features that they have talked about. Now, they've talked about more recently one of the features, which is called the Shifting Sands. So in Dune Awakening, there's going to be one large central deep desert map, which is essentially the giant playground where everyone's going to go and fight. And then it's going to separate out into its individual shield walls, which are the smaller servers where you can build your base, you can have as your home, what have you. The idea is that their new feature is called Shifting Sand. So on a weekly basis, essentially that whole deep desert, which has all the different ecology labs, all of these downed ornithopters, and all these various things that are out there, gets completely randomized and swapped week to week. Now that is something that I think is really cool. They're taking this kind of like weekly reset idea to a different level, so that there is always a certain level of, we'll say, fresh content that's out there for you and your friends to do. And also, again, they've really pushed the idea of it being an MMO being a massive multiplayer online game. The idea of it is that you can essentially do what you want. You can be what kind of person that you want to be in this game. They've even hinted that you are capable of being a lone wolf if that's not something that you want to do. I mean, I don't know why we really get into an MMO and be like, other players. But the idea is that you would have the capabilities to do so if you so choose. All in all, I think that they are doing a very good job, and I think that they deserve a little bit of credit from there. Should I be worried about the game? No, I don't think that we should be worried about the game in its current position. I do, however, say that there's always a level of cautious optimism. I'm hoping that they do it right, and it sounds like they're taking the steps that they need to do this game right. However, I am also understanding that there are games that are super duper hyped up and then eventually just fall flat on their face, and kind of talking about you, Starfield. But the idea of it is that you're going into it with a grain of salt, is that the game looks great, it could be really, really good, but I'm going to also say that it's still early on, and it probably won't be everything that we expect, and that's okay. So just hang in there, sleepers. Now, if you guys do want to catch up on the most recent bit of information, they were teasing some things about Dune Awakening. You can check that video right here. Aside from that, stay caffeinated, sleepers.